My son and daughter-in-law kept my grandson locked up, cut his hair, took away his phone, and forbade him to go to school. I was shocked when I found out. It had bothered me that for the past few months my son and his wife ignored my calls, and when I did manage to reach them, they quickly brushed me off, promising to call back. But they never did. I felt something was wrong, and with a grandmother's intuition, sensed that something might have happened to my grandson, especially since he hadn't replied to my messages in a long time. So I decided to drive to the other state where they lived and confront them in person. I was horrified by what I saw when I knocked on their door. Friends, before I open the door to this chapter of my life, I want to ask you something. When was the last time your gut told you something was wrong? So wrong that you couldn't sleep until you found out the truth. Tell me in the comments. And if you're new here, hit subscribe because this story will make you believe in the power of a grandmother's instinct. It began with silence. Not the peaceful kind that comes with a Sunday afternoon nap or the gentle hush after a baby finally falls asleep. No, this was the kind of silence that presses on your chest like a weight, the kind that grows heavier each day it goes unanswered. For months, my son Daniel and his wife Marissa had been ignoring my calls. At first, I told myself they were busy, new jobs, a move to another state, raising my grandson Eli, but then the pattern sharpened. When I did get through, they'd rush me off the phone with a quick, "We'll call you back later, Mom." But the call never came. And Eli, my sweet, lanky 14-year-old with a mop of sandy hair and a smile that could light up my kitchen. He hadn't answered my messages in weeks. At first, I blamed video games, schoolwork, teenage moods. But after the third month without even a "hi, Grandma," unease began to curl inside me like smoke. I replayed our last real conversation. He'd messaged me a photo of the comic book we'd been reading together over video calls. His hair was long then, past his ears. His eyes had that spark. I'd written back, "Next time I visit, we'll go get ice cream." But there was no next time. One night, lying awake, I realized I hadn't seen Eli. Not in photos, not on social media, for nearly 6 months. My daughter-in-law's accounts, once flooded with family pictures, had gone eerily quiet. Daniel's posts were all about work. Something wasn't right. I began to call more frequently, leaving cheerful voicemails that mask my worry. "Just checking in. Hope everyone's well. Love you." No response. Then, one afternoon, I caught Daniel on the phone. His voice was tense, clipped. When I asked to speak to Eli, he said, "He's busy," and hung up. Busy doing what? Why did he sound afraid? A grandmother's heart doesn't need hard evidence. It feels the fracture before it's visible. I knew deep in my bones that something had happened. I booked a ticket the next day. Their town was 3 states away, but distance didn't matter. I told no one. Sometimes you have to arrive unannounced to catch the truth before it hides. It was raining when I pulled up to their house, a modest 2-story with drawn curtains and a yard that looked neglected. I grabbed the small tin of Eli's favorite cookies from the passenger seat, my excuse for dropping by, and walked up the path. I knocked once. No answer. Twice. Then I heard shuffling. A long pause. Finally, the door cracked open just enough for Marissa's face to appear. Her eyes widened, surprise, maybe panic, and she stepped outside, pulling the door nearly shut behind her. "Gloria, you should have called," she said, voice pitched too high. "I did call," I answered evenly, "many times." "Is Eli here?" She hesitated. "He's not feeling well. Resting." Something in her tone was wrong, too rehearsed. I craned my neck, and through the narrow gap I caught a glimpse of a shadow moving down the hallway. "I'll just say hello. I brought him cookies," I said, trying to push the door open further. Marissa blocked me. Now's not a good time. A sound interrupted her. A muffled voice. Young. Urgent. Grandma? My blood turned cold. Eli, I called, stepping forward. That's when I saw him. The hallway light fell across his face, thinner than I remembered. His hair, once long, was brutally cropped, uneven. He wore an oversized sweatshirt that hung on his bony frame, and his eyes... The spark was gone. "Why haven't you been in school?" I asked, my voice trembling. Daniel appeared then, stepping out from the kitchen. "This is none of your business, Mom," he said, his voice low and hard. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. When it comes to my grandson's well-being, it's exactly my business. Marissa's knuckles whitened on the edge of the door, but I caught the briefest flicker of fear in her eyes, fear that the facade had cracked. Before she could slam it shut, I wedged my foot across the threshold. "Either you move," I said, voice leveled by 67 years of worship and warfare, "or I call the sheriff and every neighbor within earshot." Daniel's jaw flexed. "Mom, you're overreacting." I tilted the cookie tin so Eli could see the familiar swirl of chocolate chips we used to bake together. "Honey, come here," I coaxed. Eli hesitated, eyes darting from his father to me. Then, like hope sprouting through concrete, he shuffled forward. Up close, I could see raw skin where his hairline had been hacked by dull scissors, and faint bruises, yellowing halos, peeked from under his sweatshirt collar. His hands trembled as he took the tin, clutching it to his chest like a life preserver. In that instant, grandmother instincts eclipsed every polite instinct. I stepped fully inside. "We need to talk in private." Marissa hissed, "Daniel, do something." He blocked the hallway. "Mom, you don't understand the full situation." "Then enlighten me," I snapped. "Why isn't my grandson in school? Why hasn't he had a haircut that didn't look like punishment? And where's his phone?" Eli's eyes filled. "They took it," he whispered. Daniel flinched. He was distracted. "Bad grades." "Bad grades don't earn imprisonment." My voice echoed down the narrow corridor, bouncing off framed family photos now warped in my view. "Show me his room." Marissa muttered a curse but stepped aside. Daniel led the way, shoulders hunched as if gravity itself accused him. The bedroom door bore a new deadbolt on the outside. He fished a key from his pocket, turned it with the reluctance of opening Pandora's box. Inside, the room was stripped bare. No posters, no books, no computer. Just a mattress on the floor and a single sheet. Where paint once bore Eli's doodles, gray primer smothered color, a small barred latch on the window mocked daylight. My stomach clenched. Eli hovered behind me, clutching my sleeve. "They said it was temporary," he breathed. "Some online challenge about unplugging, but then they kept taking more." Marissa folded arms, defiant. "We're his parents. We decide discipline." "This isn't discipline," I said, voice low and trembling. "It's captivity." Daniel raked a hand through thinning hair. "We were trying tough love. He'd been sneaking out, vape pens." Eli shook his head violently. "I was only meeting friends after school. They never listened." Tears carved tracks through crusted cookie crumbs on his cheek. The room spun with the sour scent of panic. I drew myself up, taller than arthritis should permit. "Pack a bag," I told Eli. 4 days worth. We're leaving." Marissa lunged, but Daniel caught her wrist. Anguish shadowed his face. The sun-eyed rocked to sleep, wrestling the father he'd become. "Mom, Department of Children's Services will split him from us," he pleaded. "Maybe it's time someone higher than you decided what's safe," I answered. I pulled out my phone. "You have 10 minutes to prove you can parent responsibly, or I dial 911. Marissa's voice cracked open. "We just wanted control back." He mocked us, called us names. Because you locked him away, I thundered. Respect grows from trust, not terror. She collapsed onto the hallway rug, sobbing, ugly guttural sounds while Daniel stared at the deadbolt in his palm as though it were a venomous snake. Eli disappeared into the closet and emerged with a small duffel. I noticed a spiral notebook clutched to his chest, pages bulging. He offered it to me. I wrote everything, he whispered. On the cover, block letters read Jail Diary. My heart shattered like stained glass. Time blurred. I ushered Eli toward the front door. Marissa followed, tears streaking. Please don't take him, she begged. I paused at the threshold. You don't get to keep someone by caging them. Earn him back by healing yourself. Outside, rain had stopped, leaving the air sharp with renewal. I loaded Eli into my car, buckled him in like I had when he was 5. Daniel stepped onto the porch, rain slicking his cheeks. Maybe tears, maybe sky. He didn't speak, but his empty hands trembled. I started the engine. Eli stared at the passenger mirror until the house shrank behind us. Then, voice barely a breath, he asked, Grandma, what happens now? I reached across, squeezed his shoulder. Now we get you safe. Then we shine light in every corner they tried to darken. Fog ribboned across the interstate as I pointed my hatchback east, away from my son's house and toward state lines that once felt like casual geography, now a living moat. Eli sat rigid in the passenger seat, duffel on his lap, eyes flicking to every passing mile marker as if each one might sprout arms and drag him back. First stop is a motel, I said, keeping my voice gentle but decisive. After breakfast, we drive straight to the County Child Advocacy Center. Trained counselors, social workers, people who know how to keep kids safe. Eli swallowed. Will Dad go to jail? I don't know, I answered, truth over comfort. That's not on your shoulders. For 20 minutes, we drove in silence, broken only by wiper blades and Eli's shaky breaths. Then he said, Grandma, I cut my hair because they said long hair made me weak. They said phones poison minds and school lies to us. My grip tightened on the wheel. Cult tactics, I thought. Control, isolation, erasure of identity. None of that is your fault, I said. We'll fix the haircut, the schooling, and any lies they planted. We pulled into a roadside motel just after midnight, blue neon buzzing like an anxious chorus. Inside, the clerk slid over a key without comment. Perhaps a grandmother with a gaunt teenager wasn't the strangest pair she'd seen tonight. The room smelled of lemon cleaner and old carpet, but the beds were clean. While Eli showered, I scanned his spiral notebook. Page after page detailed dates, punishments, the day they first locked the door, the night they shaved his head with kitchen shears, the threats. If you run, Grandma dies of grief. My pulse roared. At the back, he'd sketched comic strip heroes breaking chains captioned Freedom Day. Eli emerged, wrapped in a towel, wisps of uneven hair clinging to his forehead. I handed him a clean t-shirt I'd tucked in my purse. We'll get shampoo and real scissors tomorrow. He climbed into bed, eyes already closing. As I turned off the lamp, he whispered, Grandma, thanks for not giving up. Tears pricked my eyes. Never, I said. Sleep, I'm right here. Morning brought a sun too bright for the weight it illuminated. Over motel waffles we planned. Advocacy Center first, then a call to Detective Reynolds, an old church friend, now lieutenant in Child Protective Services. But when we stepped outside, a black SUV idled across the lot, Daniel's. My heart slammed. Marissa sat in the passenger seat, cheeks streaked, clutching her phone. Daniel stepped out, palms raised. Mom, please, he called. We just want to talk. I positioned myself in front of Eli. Talking ends when locks go on bedroom doors. Marissa opened her window. We contacted an attorney. Kidnapping charges? Eli flinched. I felt his nails dig into my sleeve. No one kidnapped him? I snapped. I removed a minor from unlawful confinement, filed under mandatory reporting law in this state. Daniel's shoulders sagged. Mom, we messed up. We were scared of losing control. Give us a chance to make it right. Making it right starts with accountability, I said. Follow us to the advocacy center, speak to professionals. Then maybe a judge decides visitation. A tense beat. Daniel glanced at Marissa, whose expression curdled between anger and grief. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. Okay, we'll follow. The advocacy center sat inside a refurbished Victorian painted lavender. Inside, murals of superheroes covered the walls. Capes, shields, bright eyes, hope in latex paint. A social worker named Monica guided us to a child-friendly interview room while Daniel and Marissa waited downstairs. Eli squeezed my hand before entering, notebook clutched like a passport. Monica returned 40 minutes later. He's very brave, she said. We're calling CPS in both states and arranging emergency counseling. We'd like you listed as temporary guardian, Miss Mayfield. Are you willing? Yes, I breathed, relief and resolve intertwining. Downstairs, Daniel signed intake forms with trembling fingers. Marissa broke into sobs when Monica mentioned felony child endangerment charges. I felt no glee, only a tired ache. Justice is a scalpel, not a hammer. As we left, Eli carried a new backpack stuffed with comics, hygiene kits, and a prepaid phone numbers programmed to hotlines in my contact. For safety, Monica said. And empowerment. Eli's smile, faint but real, flickered for the first time in months. We walked past Daniel, who whispered, I'm sorry, son. Eli paused. Not forgiveness, but a hinge opening a crack. Then we stepped into bright afternoon sun where freedom smelled like cut grass and possibilities. By dawn the next day, our motel felt like an exposed nest. Headlines splashed across regional sites. Teen freed after extreme discipline. Grandmother to seek custody. A local station even parked a van across the street. Its satellite dish loomed like a judgmental moon. Eli drew the curtains and asked, Will everyone at school see this? Maybe, I said, honest again. But you'll have a whole team ready to back you up. The team solidified that morning at the county courthouse. Detective Reynolds, silver-mustached, eyes kind, met us on the steps with 2 CPS officers. They filed the emergency guardianship petition Monica drafted, then ushered us inside for a judge's signature. 10 pen strokes later, Eli was legally in my care until a full hearing. My knees nearly buckled from relief, but outside we walked into a storm. Marissa stood on the plaza in a pastel blazer, flanked by an attorney slick as oiled marble and a news crew hungry for spectacle. A microphone thrust forward caught her trembling voice. My son was abducted. This so-called abuse is fabricated by an overbearing grandmother who can't accept modern parenting. Cameras pivoted toward us. Eli shrank behind me. Reynolds stepped between flashing bulbs and my grandson. No comment, he barked, escorting us to the car. Yet the words abducted and fabricated had already been flung into the public wind. That afternoon, Marissa's attorney filed an emergency injunction to void my guardianship, claiming Eli faced religious alienation and grandmaternal manipulation. Court date, 48 hours. My pulse galloped, but I'd crossed too many valleys to falter at the courtroom door. We bunkered at Ada's bungalow on Maple Street, away from motel vultures. Ada brewed mint tea while I assembled a war binder. Medical reports. Eli's diary pages, with his permission. Photos of the bolted door, Monica's notes. A psychologist's initial evaluation flagging emotional neglect, evidence piled taller than my worry. At midnight, Eli tapped my door. "Grandma, can I cut the rest even?" He held scissors, referencing his butchered hair. I sat him at Ada's kitchen table, combed gently, trimmed away jagged locks until a neat buzz emerged, the first tidy line in his new chapter. He peered into Ada's hand mirror, smiled small. "Looks like a fresh start," he said. "Here in day." The courtroom overflowed, press, spectators, 2 bloggers live streaming commentary like a true crime circus. Judge Caldwell, stoic behind wire-rimmed glasses, warned that disruptions would clear the gallery. Marissa's lawyer led with theatrics, waving a printout of my YouTube storytelling channel. "Your Honor, Ms. Mayfield turns family drama into online profit. How can we trust her narrative?" Gasps fluttered like paper birds. I rose on counsel's cue. "Storytelling doesn't negate facts," I said, voice steady. "Facts are, they locked a child in a room, shaved his head, removed education, cut off communication. I have photographs, eyewitness accounts, and the child's own words." Eli's psychologist testified next, describing symptoms of psychological confinement, night terrors, hypervigilance, diminished self-worth. The gallery fell silent. Then Marissa took the stand. Tears shimmered. "We were desperate," she said. "Eli was vaping, defying us, failing classes. We Googled digital detox, followed extreme guidelines. Maybe we went too far, but we're his parents." "Too far," the prosecutor echoed, projecting photos of the dead-bolted door and the shaved head. Even the bloggers stopped typing. When cross-examined, Marissa admitted Daniel had installed spyware on Eli's phone months earlier. She also conceded they hadn't enrolled him in state-authorized homeschooling. Each answer tightened the judicial noose. Judge Caldwell recessed for lunch. In the corridor, Daniel approached Eli and me, eyes swollen, voice raw. "Mom was stricter than I wanted," he murmured, "but I let fear rule. I'm ready to testify for Eli against myself if needed." Tears slipped before he could brush them away. Inside the courtroom, Daniel's testimony sliced through Marissa's defense like light through fog. He confessed the bolt, the hair, the confiscated phone, and, most damning, Marissa's threat to ship Eli to a boot camp if he contacted me again. Even Marissa's attorney winced. When closing arguments ended, Judge Caldwell spoke without flourish, guardianship with maternal grandmother upheld, Daniel eligible for supervised visitation after parental capacity classes. Marissa's access suspended pending psychological evaluation, criminal investigation to proceed, gavel down. Verdict echoed freedom. Reporter questions battered us on the courthouse steps. Eli breathed deep and answered one. "Kids aren't property. Listen to us before it's too late." His voice carried across microphones and I swear across every bedroom door still locked somewhere. That evening, Maple Street glowed with porch lights welcoming us home. Ada baked celebratory peach cobbler. Detective Reynolds dropped by with comics for Eli. Daniel texted a photo. Enrollment paperwork for parenting therapy signed. Eli sat on the porch swing, hair fuzz catching sunset. "Grandma," he said, "think I could share my diary pages online? Maybe other kids feel trapped." Pride swelled inside me. "When you're ready," I said. I almost believed the storm had passed, until the U-Haul arrived at Daniel and Marissa's place, and deputies discovered cartons of shredded documents scattered across the driveway like bleached confetti. The neighbor who called it in sent me phone photos. Marissa, hair wild, feeding reams of paper into a portable shredder while movers dragged boxes toward the truck. Detective Reynolds phoned me 5 minutes later. "Gloria, we just got a warrant tip from the county DA. Turns out Marissa had a side hustle, Unlicensed teen boot camp placements across state lines. We need anything digital she left behind. Side hustle. My stomach lurched. I remembered Eli's diary entry. Mom threatened to send me to a camp in Arizona if I broke the rules again. I'd thought it an empty threat. Now I saw the shadow behind it. When CPS removed Marissa's electronic devices, the forensics team found an encrypted folder marked Consulting Contracts. Hidden inside, intake sheets for 16 minors, each assigned a numeric ID, each routed to remote behavior mod camps in Utah, Texas, Nevada, states with lax oversight. Fees ran up to $12,000 per child. Most chilling was a PDF labeled E2025A. Eli's intake form. Across the top, in block red font, transport date pending. The document listed non-compliance, negative attitude, technology addiction as justifications. Under parent acceptance of risk, Marissa had already e-signed. Daniel's signature line was blank. I sat at Ada's kitchen table staring at the printout, hands trembling so badly the pages rattled like wind-clap shutters. Eli stood behind me, reading over my shoulder. When he saw the file name, he inhaled sharply. They were really going to send me away. I turned, gathered him close. And they will answer for trying. Because Marissa brokered placements across state lines without licensure, the investigation jumped from county jurisdiction to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Office of Inspector General Reynolds called that night. Gloria. They'll convene a grand jury for human trafficking adjacent offenses. Eli's diary and testimony are key. I felt the weight of that request settle on my grandson's thin shoulders. Testifying before a grand jury, rows of strangers, federal prosecutors, the sheer echo of the chamber, could scrape open wounds barely scabbed over. Yet he straightened, met Reynolds's voice through the speakerphone and said, "I'll do it. If other kids are stuck like I was, they need a way out." Over the next week, a victim advocate named Dr. Val Hayes coached Eli on how to testify, speak slowly, answer only what is asked, drink water when nerves rattle. At night, he and I practiced. I'd play the prosecutor, clipboard in hand, while Ada pretended to be a juror, nodding encouragement with every clear answer Eli gave. We scattered gummy bears across the dining table. Each time Eli finished a question without breaking eye contact, he'd move one candy to a safe pile. By day 4, the pile looked like a Technicolor mountain. Still, nightmares stalked him. Twice he woke screaming, convinced a midnight transport team stood at the window. I'd climb into the rocking chair by his bed, humming old hymns until his breathing slowed. Each dawn, determination returned to his gaze like sunrise over stubborn hills. The federal courthouse downtown dwarfed the county building, steel ribs and mirrored glass, climbing 30 stories into spring haze. Inside, armed marshals scanned every pocket. The lobby hum resonated like a beehive. Eli clutched his Riverstone-labeled Courage, ink darkening from constant handling. We waited in a witness room painted a soothing seafoam. Prosecutor Leslie Carmichael, thin, fierce, silver pixie cut, entered with a warm smile. "Eli, your story helps expose a pipeline exploiting hundreds of kids. Ready?" He nodded, voice steady. "Ready." Through a small window, I saw doors swing open, marshals escorting Marissa in shackles, orange jumpsuit hanging like regret. She glanced toward our room, eyes hollow, before disappearing down a different hallway. Daniel had already pled guilty to misdemeanor neglect and was attending weekly therapy. He would testify for the prosecution later. Eli vanished behind jury room doors for 82 minutes that felt like 82 years. I paced, praying every verse I'd ever memorized. When the doors finally opened, he stepped out, shoulders rolled back, eyes shimmering, but not with fear, with relief. "It's done," he whispered. They listened. Carmichael confirmed. The grand jury would proceed to full indictment on multiple counts of illegal transport and child endangerment. Outside, press swarmed. I shielded Eli, but he raised a hand. "I'll speak," he said, voice carrying across microphones. "If any kid hears this and feels trapped, tell an adult you trust. If they won't listen, tell another. Keep telling until someone opens the door." Reporters fell silent, pens frozen mid-scribble. That night, back on Maple Street, neighbors left chalk messages on the sidewalk. "You're brave, Eli." "Doors stay open here." He crouched, touched the chalk, smiled wider than I'd seen since Christmas 2 years ago. I realized then, courage can be contagious, and once truth steps into daylight, it invites 1,000 others to follow. Hold tight, dear friends. In our final chapter, federal indictments ripple through hidden boot camp networks, Daniel confronts his past in a watershed therapy session, and Eli's message sparks a nationwide hotline that even Congress can't ignore. The morning after Eli's testimony, my porch looked like a flower shop in a windstorm. Bouquets from strangers, envelopes thick with handwritten thanks, postcards from parents who'd wrestled the same silent dread I once did. One note read, "Your grandson's courage saved my niece. We called CPS today." I pressed the card to my chest, feeling purpose, thrum like a second heartbeat, but as gratitude poured in, backlash brewed. An anonymous account, later traced to one of Marissa's consulting partners, posted, "Helicopter grandma brainwashes teen for 15 minutes of fame." Trolls swarmed my channel. Ada shut the laptop. "Let them rage in the dark," she said. "We're busy turning on lights." Prosecutor Carmichael phoned that afternoon. "Gloria, the DA wants to launch a pilot hotline for kids in extreme discipline homes. They'd like Eli's slogan, 'Keep telling until someone opens the door,' as the campaign theme." My throat thickened. "Will it be staffed by trauma-trained counselors?" I asked. "Round the clock," she promised. Eli designed the logo himself. A hand knocking on a brightly lit door, the hotline went live within 10 days. Calls flooded in, 200. The first weekend, triple that by week's end. News anchors dubbed it Eli's door line. Meanwhile, Daniel attended court-mandated family systems therapy. On a gray Tuesday, he asked if I'd join a session. I'd prayed for this, but nerves still pricked my skin as I entered the counseling suite, walls lined with watercolors of trees uprooting and replanting. Daniel sat on one side, eyes rimmed red. Eli, beside me, clutched his stone. Therapist Dr. Molina invited Daniel to speak. "I let fear of losing control turn into tyranny," he said, voice shaking. "I copied articles on behavior boot camps and convinced myself tough love was love." He swallowed hard. "Eli, I believed lies because they excused my own insecurity as a father." Eli's gaze stayed steady. "You hurt me," he said, not a quiver in the words. "But owning it matters." He slid a fresh stone across the table, "Rebuild" written in blue. "Carry this. We'll see what you do with it." Tears spilled down Daniel's cheeks. He cupped the stone like a fragile egg. For the first time since this nightmare began, hope flickered between father and son. While our family stitched threads back together, federal agents raided 3 boot camps tied to Marissa's network. They found sleep deprivation rooms, isolation boxes, forged medical waivers. Headlines thundered louder than any troll brigade. Senator Dela Cruz, chair of the Child Welfare Caucus, requested Eli testify at a congressional field hearing on unregulated teen facilities. "We need his voice," her aide said. My gut clenched at the thought of more spotlights, but Eli gripped my hand. "If I can help shut them down, I want to." The hearing date. 2 weeks. 5 days before we were due to fly to D.C., a manila envelope arrived addressed to me. Inside, a single photo of Eli walking to school, timestamped that morning, and a typed note, "Keep quiet or the door closes permanently." I felt the room spin. Ada caught my elbow, eased me into a chair. Detective Reynolds studied the photo. Classic intimidation will increase patrols. He installed a doorbell camera and arranged for Eli's school to add a plainclothes officer. Still, fear lurked in every shadow of the yard. That night, Eli found me pacing the hallway. "Grandma, bullies bank on silence. If we cancel, they win." His voice, steady, resolved, pulled me back from the ledge. "You're right," I said, hugging him so tight he squeaked. We flew to D.C. flanked by 2 marshals. The field hearing convened in a chamber lined with oak and gravitas. Cameras whirred, but this spotlight felt different. Purposeful. Not prying. Eli read his statement. "My parents locked me away to fix me, but kids aren't phones you can reboot. We're people. You guide us. You don't cage us." He handed Senator Dela Cruz a copy of his diary. "These pages are my proof. Please make sure no kid has to write one like it again." Applause, not customary in hearings, rippled before the gavel restored order. Dela Cruz introduced the Safe Youth Act, mandating federal oversight of all residential behavior programs, hotline funding, and whistleblower protections for minors. Reporters cornered us afterward. One asked Eli, "What's next?" He smiled. A sunrise kind of smile. High school, comics club, and maybe driver's ed if grandma's brave. Laughter bubbled, tension melting. Back home, Daniel planted young maples along his property, living apologies. Marissa, still in custody, wrote Eli a 12-page letter acknowledging her crimes. Whether he reads it, time will tell. The trolls faded, drowned by doorline success stories. "Your number saved me." "I knocked," someone answered. One quiet evening, I stood beside Eli on the porch. Fireflies blinked Morse code sermons over the lawn. He held the original courage stone, edges worn smooth. "You know," he said, "a stone sinks when you let it go. But it also makes ripples. Big ones." I slipped my arm around his shoulders. "And those ripples keep moving long after we stop watching." Friends, if you've stayed with me this far, take a deep breath, because the fight for every locked-away child is about to crash against the marble walls of the U.S. Senate, and one unexpected envelope may save or shatter everything we've built. 3 weeks after Eli's testimony, the Safe Youth Act sailed through committee only to slam into a filibuster led by Senator Doyle, an old guard politician whose re-election coffers bulged with donations from therapeutic boarding schools. He called the bill unnecessary federal meddling. My phone exploded with messages from advocacy groups begging us to return to D.C. for a press conference. Eli's shoulders sagged when he heard, but he nodded. "We don't quit at overtime," he said. "I booked flights and prayed like Elijah on Mount Carmel." The night before we left, Detective Reynolds dropped by holding a slim USB. "Forensics finished Marissa's drives," he said. "There's more." Text chains showing Daniel knew about other kids being shipped out, even gave referrals. My stomach plunged. Daniel had sworn he'd never endorsed Marissa's side business. Reynolds shrugged. Could be ignorance. Could be complicity. He claims Marissa used his old logins without consent. Tomorrow the prosecutor decides whether to upgrade his charge. I found Daniel planting tulips by flashlight, sleeves rolled, rebuild stone tucked in his pocket. I handed him the USB report. He read under porch light, face draining. "I didn't send those kids," he choked. "Marissa must have copied my account." Tears glinted. But it's my negligence. Again. I looked at the stone in his palm. Rebuilding takes more than planting flowers. Walk into that prosecutor's office tomorrow, tell them everything, and accept whatever hammer drops. He closed his eyes, nodded. First thing. At dawn, Ada fetched the mail and emerged white-faced, clutching a thick envelope postmarked Nevada. Inside, a spiral-bound notebook page, shaky handwriting. Dear Eli, my name is Jonah. I was at Desert Pines Camp. They shaved my head and took my phone like yours. I saw your speech on TV. Seeing you gave me hope. I'm planning to run tonight when guards change. If I don't make it, please tell someone where I am. He'd drawn a crude map, circled a dirt road off Highway 93. The letter ended. Ripples make waves. Yours reached me. Eli read it twice. Cheeks pale. We can't wait, he whispered. What if guards catch him? Reynolds agreed. Nevada State Police were alerted within the hour. GPS coordinates forwarded. An amber-style blast issued. But Jonah's note ignited fresh urgency. The filibuster wasn't a policy debate, it was a countdown. The Senate press gallery buzzed like an agitated hive when Eli and I stepped behind the podium. Senator Dela Cruz opened with fire. While my colleague reads phone book pages to block reform, teenagers are begging for rescue. She held up Jonah's letter. Names redacted. Reporters gasped. Eli spoke next, voice clear, no quaver. Senator Doyle says federal oversight isn't needed. Tell that to Jonah running through a desert tonight. Tell that to me, locked in my room. Kids need doors, not padlocks. Cameras flashed. Doyle's staff shuffled behind pillars. That evening, Kurz opened the door, trended worldwide. Over 100,000 constituents flooded Senate lines. 3 co-sponsors flipped. Doyle's filibuster teetered. At 2 a.m., our hotel phone rang. State troopers had found Jonah, a wiry 15-year-old huddled behind a mesquite shrub, dehydrated but alive. He'd memorized Eli's speech. The officers said he recited it between sobs as they loaded him into the cruiser. Tell Eli I kept knocking, he'd said. Eli listened, tears streaking the glow of the bedside lamp. He's safe, I whispered. Your ripple reached him. For once, my grandson slept through the night. Next morning, Daniel texted, met with DA, pleading to reckless endangerment, community service, parenting probation. They believe me, but said Eli's forgiveness will take longer. I'll earn it. A photo showed him holding the rebuild stone outside the courthouse, sunlight sparking its blue letters. I exhaled gratitude and sorrow for the road he still must walk. We hurried to the Senate gallery. On the floor, Doyle's grip had slipped. With the Nevada rescue flooding national news, his allies peeled away. At noon, cloture vote. 62 ayes. Filibuster broken, final passage slated for sunset. Eli squeezed my hand so tight my bones popped. We did it, Grandma. I shook my head, eyes brimming. You did it. You, Jonah, every kid who kept knocking. The Senate clock read 4:37 p.m. when Senator Doyle lumbered to the lectern a final time, waving a thick amendment packet like a white-flagged spear. Colleagues, he intoned, if the Safe Youth Act must pass, strip its hotline pork. States, not Washington, should answer phones. His staff smirked. Slashing the hotline meant gutting Eli's door line before it could ring another lifeline. Senator Dela Cruz rose, eyes blazing. I yield 5 minutes to a constituent witness. Gasps rippled. Citizens rarely speak on the floor. Gallery doors opened, and Eli, blazer too big, courage stone in pocket, walked the blue carpet under clerks' wary eyes. Camera flashes burst like fireworks, but his voice carried steady through the chamber microphones. If you cut this hotline, he said, kids like Jonah keep running through deserts. Kids like me stay behind locked doors. A phone line is cheaper than trauma surgery, cheaper than a funeral. He lifted Jonah's photocopied letter. The cost of silence is written here. You could hear shoe leather squeak in the hush that followed. Doyle shifted, throat bobbing. The presiding officer called for a vote on the amendment. 41 ayes, 55 nays. The poison pill sank. Applause, technically out of order, bloomed anyway. Eli's cheeks flushed crimson as aides escorted him back. I wiped tears, pride swelling larger than the Capitol dome. At 6:12 p.m., the Safe Youth Act cleared final passage and slid toward the president's desk. While senators shook hands, my phone buzzed. Reynolds. Marissa's plea hearing just ended, he said. She'd accepted 10 years, with possibility of parole at 6, plus restitution to every child her network harmed. She read a statement acknowledging irreparable damage and naming Daniel as an unwitting participant, an admission that cleared him of additional charges. The judge ordered her to complete trauma awareness coursework in prison, a small justice, but justice all the same. 2 days later, Daniel arrived at Ada's porch, clutching rebuild. Eli hesitated at the screen door. Daniel knelt, stone balanced on his palms. I met every parent Marissa referred, he said. I apologized. Gave them the restitution from selling our house. I start parenting classes Monday. He paused. May I join you at Comics Club next week? No promises, just presents? Eli studied the stone, then stepped outside and touched it. 1 meeting, he said, and you buy the pizza. Daniel's tears fell onto granite letters, proof the rebuild had begun. Within a month, the president signed the bill. Doorline funding expanded nationwide. Eli cut the ribbon at the regional call center, cameras capturing his new haircut, soft waves growing in, like resilience itself. Jonah, now placed with relatives in Oregon, sent Eli a handmade bracelet, blue beads spelling thank you. Eli wore it the day he testified one last time, this round in a class debate about civic duty, not trauma. And Senator Doyle, he announced retirement, citing shifting tides. The headline read, Doorline Tide Sweeps Old Guard Aside. Spring melted into early summer. On Maple Street, fireflies returned with their Morse code sermons. Ada poured sweet tea while Eli sketched new superhero panels. A grandmother wielding a door knocker shield, a boy flinging stones that turned into bridges. Daniel, fresh from therapy, painted the porch railing, every brush stroke a silent apology. I sat in the rocker, courage stone warm in my hand, marveling at how ripples had indeed become a tide. Eli looked up from his drawing. Grandma, what do we do when all the doors are finally open? I smiled. We build more houses, baby, and keep the lights on.